Did you know you all can be hackers? Do you know there's a service like ChatGPT that allows you to select a business and execute a cyber attack on a business?
Everyone's been trying to produce more content. Now you can create 100 pieces of content in a day easy. On LinkedIn, we're seeing about 65-70% of content is AI generated.
12 months, we have fundamentally seen software developers lose their first and second year out of uni jobs because of AI.
As soon as you start delegating that to AI, there's a bit of a misalignment there. And in the last year, everyone's been trying to produce more content, and it's a race to the bottom.
The Australian Superannuation system has under its management about $4.3 trillion of your money.
There's an AI tool on the dark web, and then you push a button and execute the malware, the ransomware, whatever attack that you want to do. AI can do the hacking for you now. It's terrifying.
All the scams. Meta owns WhatsApp, Meta owns Facebook, Meta owns Instagram. 10% of their revenue comes from ads that are ran by scammers. It's outrageous. It's disgusting, and it's publicly listed.
All right, time to launch into our third panel. Thank you so much. The feedback has been overwhelming, that the genuine insight from the panellists today has been absolutely mind-blowing. I think, do we agree on that? Like the mind-blowing level of sharing and honesty and insight that has come from the panellists so far has been remarkable. And it's only going to continue as we dive into AI vulnerabilities, cyber threats and organisational exposure on our panel for this topic. And we're very lucky to have within our midst a Churchill Fellow today. Would you make welcome the CEO of the Association for Superannuation Funds of Australia, Mary Delahunty. Also joining us on stage from Bibby Media Group, it's Nathaniel Bibby. And the CEO of Macquarie University's Cyber Skills Academy. Make welcome Matt Bushby. Back over to you, Dev.
Thank you all to being very responsive on Slido and being very active. I can see a lot of thumbs up and a few thumbs down. Thank you for that. Very interesting panel on vulnerability, cyber threats. I think from that point of view, the biggest risks sit with money. And all Australians have superannuation funds somewhere. And how the industry is having that conversation on cybersecurity in terms of protection and safety, and how are they going about it, and what are the key principles underpinning that strategy? Mary.
Thanks, Dev. Thank you for having me here today. It's nice to be in a room with such broad sort of skill sets all talking about these kind of vulnerabilities. So cybersecurity has been a really active conversation for the superannuation sector for many years now, but you may be aware that in May this year we had an unprecedented attack on the super system, and it was it showed us just the strengths that we had managed to build, but it also showed some of the vulnerabilities that we've been working on ever since. So for context, the Australian superannuation system has under its management about $4.3 trillion of your money. And we know that you set it aside for your retirement and that you expect us to keep it safe and make it grow. So the keeping it safe element obviously we need to move faster than those who would seek to take it out for nefarious reasons. And we also keep a lot of your data. For the reasons that we need to be able to pay you, we need to know who you are, and we need to know what your investment choices are. We also keep your insurance data. So you can see, Jev, as to your point, we look like the money, and bigger than the banking system, and quite a lot of data inside there. So the investment we've needed to make in cybersecurity over the last number of years has been really quite significant, and we have done so. I think one of the lessons that we learnt from the May attack, or a couple. And I'm sure all of you know it. It was credential stuffing. It came in many different forms. They tried to use many different ways to get in. Do you remember, like, for many, many years before this time, we've been asking you to engage with us like some sort of lonely child in the playground? Please engage with your super. And so one of the lessons that we learned from that attack was that because we placed such a high emphasis on member engagement and ease of transacting with us, because, like, we're aware we can be pretty boring and you glaze over when we talk about ourselves, but we wanted to make the ease of transacting with us and engaging with us so easy that we didn't put multi-factor authentication often at the front door. It was on several transactions. But that front door MFA is what you would expect now, because you deal with it through the banking system anyway. And so we really hadn't rechecked whether or not you wanted that friction in there, and we think you probably do. So now if you log on to your fund, and I know all of you have a superannuation fund, and I know you must log on weekly. Would that be right? Daily or weekly. Not this week though. There's time now because I've just got a couple of minutes if you play. That you will be met with a multi-factor authentication on the front door. And the other thing that we learnt is that the superannuation system, by virtue of its heritage, is collaborative first, but we were really good at building out, fund by fund, building internal protections, and the amount of money that left the system in that attack is testament to that. It's even $1 is too much, right? But over $4.3 trillion was less than 0.1%, something silly. But what we did learn is that we could collaborate better. And so as the industry association, that's what we're taking on, right? How do we get intelligence sharing? How do we get and we're writing, the superannuation sector playbook underneath the National Office of Cybersecurity's playbook. We're trying to develop a sort of intelligence threat sharing platform. We've got to formalise industry forums, because we're pretty good at gathering things, but we need to actually give them formal roles when something's going on. And then we need to, my desire is, by the time we reach the anniversary of that test, which will be in May next year, incident, which will be May next year, that we will have tested the uplift that we've managed to drive. So that's really what we're doing as a result of that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary. Can I go to Matt in terms of, you're going in a specific space of cyber, running an academy, and in a higher education space, the curriculum should reflect the realities of the world. And the way the cyber threats have increased and impacted, how have you, dealt with understanding of AI and cyber, use of AI within the cyberspace?
Yeah, thank you, Dev, and it's wonderful to be here. So I'm Matt Bushby. I head up the Cyber Skills Academy for Macquarie University. We claim to be Australia's leading cyber school, but we have an international footprint where we're delivering cyber education right across Southeast Asia, India, and then into the Middle East. So we're taking a lot of learnings from many of these emerging markets around cyber fluency, where most of that cyber literacy and fluency is non-existent, where many of these economies are emerging and they just don't have the safe, secure environments. But the concerning part is that we outsource much of our work to many of these emerging economies. And you only have to look at the risk that we saw with third-party risk with Qantas and its call centre in the Philippines, where Qantas might have shut down and had a safe, secure environment, but the third-party risk sat in the Philippines where the breach actually happened on Qantas data. So that's a consideration, and that's where businesses need to start to think about what does education mean for their business. And one of my key statements is that we teach people how to read, we teach people how to count, we teach people how to read, write and count, teach people how to cross the road safely in stranger danger, but we don't teach people well enough how to stay safe online. And it needs to be so fluent for every single person that we just don't take it seriously enough. Just before arriving here today, I was meeting one of our partners who's an insurance broker. And we've got an initiative where we're working with this broker and 2 cyber insurance companies to offer a discount to businesses that undertake cybersecurity training. So it reduces their premium, so they're offsetting the cost of their training against their insurance premium, because the insurance company sees them as a more positive risk to manage. But the challenges that we're having there is that these businesses are saying, yeah, it's a great idea, but just don't get around to doing it. And that's the biggest risk, is that we need to be building cyber fluency with all of our teams, because 95% of all cyber breaches are caused by staff. So you spend millions of dollars locking the back doors of your business, but spend 0 locking the front doors of your business where the greatest actual risk is. And one thing that we're toying with at the moment is that, yes, we've got cybersecurity training products. We have 16, 17 courses. But do we need an AI risk awareness course? And that's probably the big question that will emerge today, is that we've got cyber security awareness courses for businesses, but do we need AI risk? How quickly is this emerging? I mean, I was with a bunch of CISOs 2 weeks ago, and they're struggling with the amount of AI tools being used in their businesses. One major construction company here in Australia said they've got 230 instances of different AI systems running within their business. Sure, they shut down access to those AI tools, but everybody's got a personal laptop, a phone, where they're accessing AI tools. It's so easy to send an email with the data, run it through your own AI tool, bring the data back across. We're seeing that this data mitigation is keeping CISOs awake. And sorry, Dev, I know we're going to ask more questions, but I just want to call out where we're seeing some of the emerging risks. And I'm just going to illustrate this in India. We're working with the Ministry of IT in India. And they said, Matt, where do you think the emerging skill needs are that our Indian learners must be aware of? And I said, it's the same advice that we give to university students when they're contemplating, what should I study? Because in the last 12 months, we have fundamentally seen software developers lose their first and second year out of uni jobs because of AI. That's how quickly this technology space is happening, that people that have started a software development degree no longer have job opportunities as soon as they leave their degree now. So we're saying that people need to start thinking about cybersecurity and AI skills together. And that's what we need to start to think about, is bringing together those fundamental skills about securing AI, but also using AI for cybersecurity. And I'll talk about that a little bit later, Dev.
Thank you, Matt. Nathaniel, you are a bit of a LinkedIn expert and an influencer. Most of us here as an organization have their own LinkedIn pages, and then people and social media team and marketing team are using a lot of AI tools to publish content. And then that's fair and good, but how is that creating a bit more exposure to organization in terms of risks and in your observation, because you publish a lot of content on a regular basis?
Sure, yeah, I'll let the experts speak to risk, but in terms of like marketing and communication, the whole idea of marketing communication is to build trust with your audience, and so as soon as you start delegating that to AI, there's a bit of a misalignment there. And in the last year, everyone's been trying to produce more content, and it's a race to the bottom. Like now you can create 100 pieces of content in a day easy. On LinkedIn, we're seeing about 65-70% of content is AI generated. So I think the skill moving forward is going to be to actually lean more into transparency, authenticity, storytelling, Those skills are really important when it comes to communication to build trust. So when I do my LinkedIn training, for the first 3 months they're engaged, they're not allowed to use AI, because otherwise they're never going to develop the skill. They'll just run straight to it,
And you also talk about, how to be more human when you are interacting with your audience. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. So I think that's the thing that gives you the advantage, because it's not going to be, human versus human. It's human versus machine, and the machines are already 10 times smarter than all of us. So the advantage that you have is being human. And most people don't think about it. They think, we're just competing against other people that are communicating on these platforms. But we're at the point now where the algorithms themselves are using AI, and the AI of the algorithm is going to be much more powerful than whatever AI you're accessing, and the algorithms don't want AI content. They want human content. Those AI-generated posts that I'm seeing on LinkedIn, they're not going to do that well for a long time.
Thank you, Nathaniel. Mary, can I come back to you? There are a lot of projects which super funds are investing into in terms of data centers, in terms of AI infrastructure on a long-term basis. And how does the association see that as a strategy longer term?
Sure. So I guess superannuation as a sector, when we look at the portfolio, takes a pretty diversified approach to the way in which we invest your money. But one of the things that they've been looking at for a number of years now is the use of infrastructure to support emerging technology. Data centres are obviously a huge component of that. We're pretty good. In fact, Australia sort of excels, I would say, in investment in infrastructure. There's a couple of reasons for that. One of that, I think the genesis is that the way in which the Australian super system is designed, it has preservation at the heart of the architecture of super. So by that, which is often might annoy all of us, it means that we can't get our money out until we retire. That means that superannuation funds as investors can take really long-term positions and long investment horizons, which means that we can, probably better than other systems in the world, take good risks on unlisted, long-dated infrastructure. And when we have that as a part of the portfolio, it naturally then will lead to us owning things that are large infrastructure investments that big societies rely on, like roads, like airports, poles and wires. If you can think of anything dull, we would like to own it. When you arrive at an airport, you already own part of that airport. The Perth airport here, you've got some exposure to that. You've got some exposure to the car parks. Next time you complain about the car park fees, don't worry, they're coming back at you. And then you've got poles and wires, you've got roads, etc. Data centres are a natural fit in here because we can see the world moving towards needing to use more and needing to have more of that infrastructure underpinning some of the technology that you've been discussing today. One of the most interesting things, though, I think, but as you can see, I'm easily entertained because I work in super. One of the most interesting parts, though, of the data centre investment story, you might all remember the sale of AirTrunk, which was a massively successful Australian business. The buyers of AirTrunk, that sale process and the building of the investment thesis around AirTrunk really predates large language models and the massive exponential growth of the use of AI. And the investment thesis was developed for that incredible sale from the belief that here in Australia we would need more data centre infrastructure to support e-commerce, in particular in our near neighbours in Malaysia and Indonesia. And so if you think about that as a component, which we sort of forget about now in an investment point of view, because we've really caught on to this sort of AI and the use of large language models. But before that, there was a good case for data centre and infrastructure supporting e-commerce as well. So now, and this is getting off topic, but let's do it anyway. You overlay the environmental impact over that, and it goes a little bit to the previous panel talking about let's get ahead of the frameworks and legal or ethical or otherwise that we want to govern AI, we need to also get ahead of the frameworks that we want to manage the infrastructure that allows for that AI. So in Malaysia, there are certain parts of the provinces that are only giving out, permits for data centres as long as they are self-generating of their energy needs. And beyond being self-generating of their water and energy needs, particularly as it pertains to energy, they need to have a deal with the local supplier that they will actually put some of the excess energy back into the local contained grid. So there are things we can do that are actually start to look like an infrastructure play, as we would say in investment language. They look like an infrastructure investment thesis. They can actually be an energy byproduct as well. But we've got to get ahead of it, and we've got to be smarter than that in the country. Mm-hmm. But to your original question, which I've kind of forgotten, yes, we're buying a lot of data centres.
Thank you.
Love them.
Thank you for sharing that. Can I go to Matt? I've been talking about AI as behaving at the level of entry-level graduate. And what's the exposure of the higher education sector in terms of, that's what they provide majority of the product of higher education is undergrads. So how do you see the higher education sector being exposed to AI in terms of, as we develop much faster and better?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I've challenged a couple of consulting firms over the last few weeks to say I don't think the higher education sector, and I know Sally's here from the Future Skills organisation, I don't think that universities are prepared for this rapid change. The time it takes for universities to adapt, change and build product will not keep up with this pace of change that we're seeing now. And I think the industry sometimes has a bit of its blinkers on in the impact of this technological change. And this impact that we're seeing here with AI is greater than when we move to cloud-based technologies, right? So this pace of AI, we're just not prepared for it. Boards aren't prepared for it. Organisations aren't prepared for it. We are just we're a few steps behind the pace of where this technology's at. And we're trying to keep up with the building of policies and procedures. And I was in a conversation yesterday where I was asked, Matt, we're going through an assessment process for candidates to enter our course. And we're concerned about how much AI is playing in this applicant's role. And I said, you need to go back to pen and paper. Because if you're trying to determine this individual's capacity to write, to think, to be able to demonstrate their capabilities without the impact of AI, you're going to have to go back to pen and paper and to demonstrate in person what their capabilities are if you want to determine, if you're trying to avoid the impact of AI in the recruitment cycles. So there's a lot of things that people are trying to band-aid right at this moment to find solutions. But I don't think the higher education sector is prepared for the way jobs and how we're training people to be ready for these jobs. And there's a lot of work happening through some really intelligent people right around Australia and around the world that are thinking about these challenges. But to think that you're training people right at this moment where their first and second year jobs aren't available anymore because AI is doing their jobs, how do you pivot quickly to be able to ensure that these people have the right skills to enter into the workforce as well? So, and this is part of our work with universities in India, because they recognise that they're not putting out work-ready graduates with real-world skills, and that's where they're looking to partners to be able to bring these skills into those markets.
Thank you. Nathaniel, I want to take a question from the floor and online. And then you can use it from a perspective of LinkedIn or social media. Can the panel speak to the risk of bias and political ideology in AI platforms? What safeguards are in place to strengthen evidence, and is there adequate scrutiny applied when promoting or endorsing specific platforms over others?
Well, at the so I deal day to day with anything from a small business all the way up to Westpac and Apple, and it's just complete opposites at either end. Like at the smaller business level, there's no governance, there's no checklist in place, there's nothing to stop people posting stuff they haven't even proofread. Whereas at the other end, there's far too much governance, which just stops people doing anything. So I don't have the answers, but there's problems at both ends.
Thank you. Fair enough. I'll go to Mary then. If you want to take a dig on that answer, or no, not answer, question, on the question, please be my guest. And also, if you can talk about the use cases which you have in terms of the artificial intelligence within the, again, super industry, and how are you leading this conversation, and what's the why behind these use cases?
Yeah, I don't know about the governance challenges in the production of content. Is that what the question really goes to, the first one? Yeah. It's we've got an alarming amount of content out in the world, and if we stepped out here now, there'd be 4 people in the park making content for goodness knows who and what purpose. At some point, it's just going to be so much we're all going to switch off, aren't we? Is that what's going to happen? So the governance arrangements, forget whether or not you're following a policy. No one's actually watching or reading what you're doing anyway, because no one wants any more of it.
Well, yeah, it's just that there is more people consuming content, but instead of competing against 40 other pieces, you're competing at 40,000 other pieces. So the key to it is building a brand, right? And that's where people will actually go and seek your content out, and they'll learn to expect it and want it, and filter everything else out of their feed. I think what we'll probably see is over the next couple of years, there'll be a lot more social media sites pop up that'll be industry specific, different little micro niches. There's going to be, I think there'll be thousands of them in 5 years, to be honest. So we're just going to get, flooded by a sea of content. Most of it's going to be rubbish, so I think it's much better to take the time to build authenticity, build a real brand, and get the quality up,
That does explain why I do these little videos on LinkedIn. You're all welcome, but they are about super. And they are just me standing in front of a whiteboard, and they go off, as my media team tells me. They go off on LinkedIn. It's probably because it's just me standing in front of a whiteboard.
100%, yeah.
Doing maths on a whiteboard. Yeah. It's pretty embarrassing. Anywho, the use cases. Well, there's a use case in the use cases. So how's superannuation using artificial intelligence at the moment? So for the last couple of days, I've been in Perth for a few days now. There's been a financial advice conference going on down the road, and I did a lot of just sort of walking around the stalls just to find out what the exhibitors were talking about, and every second exhibitor booth was the use of artificial intelligence to be able to sort of scrape meetings to make financial advice more cost effective, presumably, but also to make it more compliant. It would be the sales pitch, to make the things that we need to do in a compliance framework more efficient, again, is the sales pitch. If you sort of dig underneath it, what's happening? A meeting is being recorded with you when you go to see a financial planner. The fact find, that is a legally required document that financial planners need to fill out, will be automatically populated by that particular conversation. And then your statement of advice, which is another legally compliant document, will start to be automatically populated as well. It's not that complex, really, is it? Because we've all been in meetings where they've been transcribed and things like that. But it's the ability for it to then, and I would have seen probably 8 or 9 of these tools trying to be sold. The ability for that to then transfer into something that is A, compliant, and B, meaningful to you is probably the change. The other ways that we're using AI in superannuation is to, like if we go to the portfolio side of super, there are some really large, when I was talking about buying, you know, the boring stuff earlier, can you imagine doing the due diligence on Sydney Airport, or where am I? Perth. Can you imagine doing the due diligence on the Perth Airport, right? You have, usually, you get taken to what's called the data room. That's all now virtual, obviously, but in the old days it was literally a data room. You're combing through paperwork about this particular asset. You've got consultants with you, you've got a lot of experts with you on airports, you might have them on infrastructure, etc. And you're building what we call a memo, which is pretty old-fashioned language, but with large decisions like buying of an airport, it goes right up the chain depending on how big your fund is, could go to the investment committee. And it might go there 3 or 4 times when you decide to participate in a big bid like that. And you've got co-investors in there and all sorts of things like that. So there's some experiments going on using like locked down enterprise models to feed the data into so that the analysts can ask the data questions instead of having to find that particular piece of paper on the thing. So it's faster to produce the investment memo. It's not doing the thinking, and there's still quite a lot of humans around it, but it's making the data interrogation slightly faster. BlackRock have been using AI in investment decision making for years, and are quite openly talk about the way in which they've got some governance models around this. And I think this is the new frontier, and it goes to your point about being trained, etc. Is to set the parameters and set the policies and processes, so the governance arrangements around when we want a human involved and when we will accept a machine-driven decision. And I thought that panel earlier on the way in which it was occupying judicial sort of spaces was quite interesting, a little bit alarming. In my mind, I sort of always want a human, for all their flaws, to apply an ethical lens on a decision. And the same applies in an investment context, really. And so what BlackRock would explain to you if they were here is that although they've been using artificial intelligence for a while, they're now using large language models, that they've also had a really embedded governance framework, which I think we can all learn a lot from, which is to say that we will accept machine-driven analysis, here, and here, and a human must be here. And then what the board might see, if that's where the decision is going, is the bits that a machine has been involved in, the parts that a human has made a decision on, and then understand the two components of that and how they've come to a decision. I think that's really quite smart, but it does take quite a lot of, it takes a cultural element, and it takes a fair bit of training.
Thank you. Can I come back to Nathaniel? There's a question for you on Slido. Thank you for the question. One of the frequently contested ideas in AI-generated content is putting a watermark if the content is AI-generated or not. What is your view on this? Would watermarking improve the public trust?
Yes, I think it's bound to happen. It's inevitable. They're already doing it with AI-generated images, so they're not far off doing it with copy as well. Obviously, video's a bit further away, but I think that'll become common practice.
Thank you. Matt, I want to share your concluding remarks on how has AI and cybersecurity, the conversation you're having across education space and clients on financial services or across sectors, because you are the front end of trying to educate and uplift in-house training skills to out-house. What are the key threads across sectors you are seeing in terms of risks, the first things they talk about, and what other vulnerabilities they are observing at the front end?
We sell fear, and we love a good war story. We like to hear about other people's problems, and people feel that it won't happen to you. And it's just the simplest thing that can create a problem within a business. We're opening up our businesses to AI, data leakage, data poisoning. I've been busting to say this. I just want to say this to everybody. Did you know you all can be hackers? Do you know there's a service like ChatGPT that allows you to select a business and execute a cyber attack on a business or an individual? There's an AI tool on the dark web that allows any single person who can find the tool to execute a cyber hack on your enemy, a business that you're competing against. It will find the vulnerabilities in that business, and then you push a button and execute the malware, the ransomware, whatever attack that you want to do on that individual business. AI can do the hacking for you now. It's terrifying that these tools are being used in reverse. And I think the biggest risk that we have is that people are just ignoring some of these risks. Unless you're in a large organisation with a large board, or you've got compliance or regulatory focus on these tools, the majority of businesses are just ignorant of these challenges because, you know, it's not going to happen to me, but the risk to a business sits at 50 to 60%. And one of the terrifying and horrifying statistics is that of all small to medium businesses that get hacked, 60% of them are out of business within 6 months. If that is not something for people to take seriously, the cybersecurity risks, the AI risks, I find it mind-boggling. But also, as a business owner, we are so under pressure from revenue, from taxes, finding clients, you know, supply chain, managing a business, that this is just another piece of noise, but it's an existential threat to businesses now. And the pace of change and the risk is amplifying astronomically, weekly, monthly, and yearly. And the threats are getting so much more sophisticated and so much more socially engineered that you don't know what's real and not. I teach cybersecurity and I nearly fell prey to a cyber social media, right? Scrolling through a couple of days before, I was talking to a mate about Canterbury, you know, the Canterbury clothing, right? Saying I need to buy my boys some shorts, you know, whatever. And a Canterbury ad appeared on Instagram. And I go, oh yeah, that's cool. 90% off, factory warehouse clearance. I go, oh yeah, that's kind of cool. Clicked on it, right? I'm going through it, an exact copy of the website. Exact copy of the website I'm going through. You know, 90% off, that seems a bit ridiculous. I saw that, you know, for, you know, 20% off a couple of days ago. That doesn't seem right. I then looked at the website, and the website name was just a little bit different. But this was a paid ad on Instagram, right? And I nearly fell prey, but it was just a little niggle. I had to pay attention to that niggle. But my parents, they would have gone, oh yeah, Mac, your son would love that. I'll buy those. Gave him the credit card details, gone. Something so simple as that. And they catch people unawares. They'll call at 2:30, speak to the receptionist. The receptionist is busy trying to get out the door to go pick up the kids from school. It's something as simple as catching somebody at their weakest moment. I nearly got caught at a weak moment. All of you will be caught at some point in a weak moment, and that's terrifying. That goes back to my first statistic, that 95% of all cyber breaches are human-related because we are human. No matter the amount of technology to back you up, you'll still have that. And this is where we need to have a balance between people having education and having those technology solutions, but not just relying on those technology solutions, because it is a war of attrition right at this moment. As the cyber criminals get better, we find the technology solutions to meet them. They then find the solutions to beat those solutions, so we find more solutions. It's a constant battle. We've got to rely on some of that AI to back us up and to protect us, but we also need to make sure that we are vigilant as well. Thanks, Dev.
Concluding remarks.
Yeah, do you mind if I just there's a couple of, I think, areas that you've touched on there, and one of them is a really crucial one too, because it's helpful for our education, I think, more broadly, if we have in our heads the difference between cyber resilience and scams, and then also fraud. Because we can, and I'm sure you do in your organisation too, especially some of you who have a slightly vaguer title, people think that you're in charge of all of them and that they're kind of all the same. And so obviously cyber resilience, the tools that we need to combat and be more resilient in a cyber space can be slightly different to the tools we need, or materially different in scams, and then different again in fraud. And some scams are perpetrated first by there being a cyber breach. So I think when we're looking at how to combat these elements of financial crime, we have to understand what are the ambulances that we're putting at the bottom of the hill, and what are the fences that we're building at the top of the hill to stop needing so many ambulances. Agentic AI, which by the way is just a warm-up lap for quantum, so we've all got to get involved here. But agentic AI can be used when the artificial intelligence turns from being an advisor to being an agent itself, and starts to act on its own or from a prompt to hack, as you were suggesting. Can also be used in reverse to keep agents busy. So agentic AI can be used as a combat tool for cyber resilience as well, and that is being explored in financial services at great scale. So there's some elements of this is scary, because it sort of is every movie that we grew up on in the 90s, isn't it? Like, it is iRobot at scale or something. Are we supposed to like them? Are we supposed to be emotional with these robots? Do we just put them in a room and let them fight each other?
Please and thank you.
Please and thank you, I know. And then you've got... But I would like to, I know it's a little off topic, but I would like to come to scams, if that's okay. Because I think this is quite pivotal, and I've had this in my head for a few days now about what it is we need to do from a superannuation perspective. So investment scams are one of the scourges of financial crime in this country at the moment. Now, how do they get to your super? Well, in large APRA-regulated funds, as most of you would likely be in. So who's a member of the public sector here? Are you still in your public sector fund? That sort of thing. Who's a member of... this always gets a hands up. Who's a member of Australian Super? Wait, who doesn't know where their super is? Okay. So you're in what's called a large APRA-regulated fund. You can't get your money out until you meet a condition of release. So you've got to be of retirement age, etc., etc. So for someone, even if you're being scammed, to get your money, it's pretty difficult for them, unless you're over 65, or you roll to a self-managed super fund. Investment scams are perpetrated through that rolling, because then you get to control your money, and you're going to say, yes, I'm going to put it in here, yes, I'm going to put it in this one, yeah, I'm going to put it here. And that's what we've seen in recently with collapses of the Shield and First Guardian. So, but scams can also be just not exist, like something doesn't exist at all, like your Canterbury shorts, they weren't there, I'm so sorry. Would have been a great sale. But they're all on the Meta website. All on Meta websites. No, not your shorts, all the scams. Meta owns WhatsApp. Meta owns Facebook. Meta owns Instagram. What else? The World. Mm-hmm. All of them perpetrate scams. All of them allow, all of those platforms are where all the scams happen. We need to lay this at the feet of that company. 10% of their revenue comes from ads that are ran by scammers. 10%, it's publicly reported. It's outrageous. Mm-hmm. It's disgusting, and it's publicly listed. So that's where we need to start to... That's a fence at the top of the hill instead of an ambulance at the bottom. Mm-hmm. So that's got to be our focus too.
Thank you, Murray. On that note...
It's crazy. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Thank you all. Thank you, Nathaniel. Thank you, Mary and Matt. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.